Hi, Teri here from Stamping Magic. Welcome back to my channel. Today's project is another gift bag. This measures 6 inches square and is 2 inches deep, so it's the same size as my previous 6-inch bag. Now it's another fold flat one. This one differs to my first one because the front panel is just paper. My original one was made up fully of cardstock, so the methods to create them are different. I've used the Hydrangea Haven stamp set together with the Hydrangea Hill Designer Series paper. These are all the measurements you need for all the elements required to create this project. So if you're interested in reproducing it, take a screenshot so you can refer to it later. There are 3 main pieces to make up the bag: the Designer Series paper for the front, a small piece of seaside spray for the base, and a large piece of seaside spray for the back and the sides. The largest piece goes into the Simply scoreboard with the longest side across the top, and I'm going to score down at a 1/2 inch, 2.5 inches, 8.5 inches and 10.5 inches. Then I'll turn my cardstock and score at 2 inches and 3 inches. I'm going to rotate my cardstock back to that first long side and score down at 1.5 inches and 9.5 inches, but only to that first horizontal score line. The smaller piece goes into the scoreboard with the short side across the top and score down at 2 inches. Going back to the larger piece, there's a little extra scoring to do. Now you've got a 1/2 inch tab, then you've got 2 sections that make up the side, the back section, 2 more sections that make up the other side, and a 1/2 inch tab. Now under each of the side sections you should have a rectangular box. You've got to score a triangle within each of those boxes. Now that will come from the centre score line to each of the bottom corners. Now I'm going to use a metal ruler and my stylus from my Simply scoreboard and just position my ruler and make the scored line. Now for the cutting. Now on each of the bottom corners you've got a small rectangular section. These have to be removed. And as I remove them, I'm going to make a slant cut at the bottom and the top of the remaining part of those 1/2 inch tabs. And then I'm going to cut up the remaining vertical score line on the base to make 2 square tabs and that long tab. So first of all, I'm going to remove the corner section and make a slant cut at the top and the bottom of the remaining 1/2 inch tabs. And then I'm going to make straight cuts toward the long section, and I'm going to make a slanted cut on that square tab on each of the sides. So again, I make a straight cut, and then on the square tab I'm going to slant cut each of the sides. On the smaller piece I'm just going to slant cut each of the sides on the 1/2 inch tab. I can now go ahead and fold on all the score lines and burnish them with my bone folder. For the centre score line on each of the side sections, you want to make these valley folds, and I'm just going to burnish them down to the point of that triangle, Once I get there, I'm going to press the triangle down because it pops up, and then I can burnish it. So again, burnish that score line into a valley fold and burnish down to the top point of that triangle. The triangle will pop up, so press it down and burnish it. The bottom edge of the Designer Series paper panel needs to be attached to the small Seaside Spray panel. So add glue to the 1/2 inch tab, then place the Designer Series paper on top of this. Make sure you're joining the bottom of the paper to it and just press it into place. For my closure, I've already die cut a piece from Seaside Spray, and for this I used one of the stitched nested label dies, and it's the largest one. Now I'm going to score this down the centre. You can see I've marked a couple of the grooves on my scoreboard, so I'm going to use one of them and align the points on the die cut and then score between them. I want to add some texture to this die cut to make it a bit more interesting, and I'm using the Tasteful Textile 3D embossing folder for this. This is what it looks like after you've embossed it. Now you might not be able to see that centre score line, but it is there, so when you fold it, it should fold nicely. Now don't use your bone folder to burnish it, just give it a little press and rub with your fingers. I'm going to use my Crop-A-Tile to punch holes for the ribbon handle, and I'm using the smaller hole on the Crop-A-Tile. I think it's about 1/8 of an inch. The distance in from the point is about 3/4 of an inch. And I'm trying to punch the hole so it straddles that score line. I'm using some of our scalloped linen ribbon in Seaside Spray for the handle. Now all I'm doing here, sorry I'm off camera for most of it, is pushing one end through each of the holes. The ribbon's quite bulky, so it took a minute. To secure the handle in place and make sure that there's no way that it's going to pull out, I use strips of tear and tape adhesive. Now I'm going to place 3 small strips horizontally underneath each of the ends of the ribbon. Then I'll give them a burnish with my bone folder. This makes it just a little easier to remove the backing, and then I'll take the backing off. I can then press the ribbon onto the glue, trim off any excess, and then I'm going to add 3 more small strips of tear and tape across the top of the ribbon. Again, give it a little burnish and remove the backing. Just make sure that your ribbon isn't twisted at all and it's positioned how you want it to be. Once the backing's removed, then I can cover the whole of that section with wet adhesive. Then I'm going to use my grid paper to help me line this up on the top edge of my back panel. So it's being glued to the outside of this panel. You're looking at the inside. Make sure that it's centered on this edge. And now I can add the front panel, and I do this just by adding glue to the 1/2 inch tabs and placing the panel on top of it, and I'm lining up the bottom score line. Then I do the second side, just add my glue and then press the front panel edge down on top of it. Next comes the base. Now the back tab needs to be folded in first of all, and then the side tabs, and then the front tab, and this leaves a nice edge on the front of the bag. So I've folded in the back tab, and then I'm adding glue to the remaining 3 tabs, pressing the sides in and then the front, and then I'll go in from the inside to make sure it's all stuck firmly. If you bring the top part of the bag together and then walk your fingers down the sides, the bag will fold naturally when it comes to that back score line. Just give it a gentle press once it's flat. I'm going to use 2 1/2-inch Velcro dots to secure my bag closed, and I'm going to add these either side of that front flap. Once they're in place, I'll carefully close the flap to position the other side of the dots and give it a press down. And then I'll very carefully open it the first time. You've got to make sure that you don't pull the Velcro dot off the paper and tear it. And then you'll be fine. This is the Hydrangea Haven stamp set, and I'm just using this tiny For You sentiment today. I'm stamping on a scrap piece of normal weight Whisper White card, and I'm going to use Misty Moonlight ink. I'll die cut this sentiment using one of the coordinating hydrangea dies, and it's this little tag. So I'm going to make sure the words are towards the bottom. And then I've used this other die to create a small flower in Seaside Spray and Highland Heather. I have a length of our white baker's twine here, which I'm going to fold in half. This creates a loop, which I can thread through the little hole at the top of the tag. Now I'm going to open up that loop and then pull the other ends through and pull it tight. I'm going to add a dot of wet glue onto the back of each of the flowers, and then I can position these onto the tag. And then just to finish them off, I'm going to add one of our basic pearls to each of them. I want this to dangle just a little bit from one side of the handle, so I'm just going to knot it and then tie a bow. And here is my finished bag. Very simple, but I don't think it needs anything else with that beautiful paper. Of course, I also had to make a card to coordinate with it. The sentiment comes from the Bloom and Grow stamp set, and I die cut it using one of the Tasteful Labels dies. Again, it's super simple. The Designer Series paper does all the work for you. And then finally I have one other set that I've created. Now this one uses all retired products in Blueberry Bushel, which is one of our retired in colours. The Designer Series paper I used is from the in colour 6-inch stack, and of course it's a lot plainer than the Hydrangea paper, but it's still very pretty. And I love that these bags fold flat. And here is the card that I've created to go with it. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notifications bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. Bye for now.